you so much. It's great to be back here at CPAC. And thank you, Jim, for that wonderful introduction. Jim and I, it's true, have found common ground and become good friends, and I'm very grateful for that. And it's nice to be with so many old and new friends this evening. I want to start by putting your minds at ease, if I may, while you eat your dinner. I am not here to hurl insults. I am not going to discuss the finer points of spray tans. I'm not going to discuss excessive perspiration. And while I also have very small hands, I have a really big phone. That is the good news. I come here tonight not in heated campaign mode, but to pause and reflect. My purpose really tonight is to help us remember who we are, to remind us of all that binds us together as Americans and as conservatives, and perhaps to suggest a path forward. But here's the bad news. Some of you may know that I studied history and philosophy, and so I need to go back in time and place for this reflection. I actually think that in times of danger and discord, of controversy and consequence, it is important to remember and to think about where we come from so that we can see more clearly where we need to go. So grab your wine. The study of history is the study of power, the ebbs and flows of military, territorial, economic, and personal power. Much of our history and most of the philosophy that has shaped our union is all about the power of the individual in relation to the power of the state and the power of the divine. Our founders actually were consumed with concern about power. They had seen firsthand the abuse of power when concentrated in the hands of the few, whether in markets or in politics. Our Constitution, therefore, enshrines individual liberties and rights. But perhaps even more importantly, if faithfully executed, our Constitution protects against the abuse of power, the collection of power, the concentration of power by the few. It is why the powers of the federal government are enumerated. It is why the 9th and 10th Amendments spell out that powers not enumerated to the federal government belong to individuals or to the states. In other words, this nation was built on the principle that power, whether economic or political, power dispersed into the hands of the many is wiser, more compassionate, more competent, more just, more effective than power concentrated in the hands of the few. This is why our founders designed a citizen government, of the people, by the people, for the people. They were smart enough along the way, as they designed this citizen government, they were smart enough to realize that we, the people, can sometimes be swayed by fears and passions instead of guided by reason. In short, we, the people, can sometimes be wrong. But they were also absolutely convinced that power concentrated in the hands of the few would always lead to abuse and ultimately a far worse outcome. And so, amazingly, although they were the ruling elite of their nation, they limited their own power. In George Washington's farewell address, he spoke about the dangerous rise of political parties. His point in that speech, among others, was that political parties by their nature create a tit-for-tat, a back and forth bickering, and focus people more on winning for their team than on governing for their republic. It is why we here are united by conservative principles, not by a political party. In other words, 220 years ago this September, George Washington our first president, was worried that we would cease to be a citizen government and instead be ruled by a political class more concerned by its own power, privilege, and prestige. Maybe he was onto something. This election, like every election, is about power. Who has it, who wants it, who keeps it, who loses it. And while the media elites and the political establishments of both parties think they know best, citizens out there are standing up and demanding a restoration of their own power. As I ran for the presidency, I had the great privilege to talk to citizens all across our exceptional nation. My message was that we as citizens, we must take our country back from the elites, the establishment, the ruling class of both parties. And what I heard from people of all kinds and all places was a feeling of powerlessness in their own lives, a loss of power over their own destinies. Feeling powerless should not be part of the American DNA. And so, knowing this, people are angry or fed up or afraid or, worst of all, apathetic. I have met veterans who, with tears in their eyes, tell me how powerless they feel when they have to fight to receive the care that they have already earned. Students who feel powerless to chart their own futures. Parents who feel they have lost control over how to educate their children. Lots of people scraping by and wondering when they lost the sense of opportunity and possibility that has always defined this nation. Here is a shocking statistic. 80% of Americans believe the government is corrupt and that the media and the political establishment is focused squarely on the preservation of their own power and position. That 80% means that Democrats, independents, Republicans, and I all agree on something. This is not working for us anymore. I'd say the American people are pretty smart. I've met lots of people who've just quit voting. They quit following politics, not because they don't care, but because they think they don't count. Too many Americans have come to believe that nothing they do will make any difference at all. Against this backdrop of dismay and discontent, which has been going on for some time, the political establishment decided that it knew exactly what to do this time, this political cycle. Now, it's always fun at these gatherings to pile on to Democrats, so let us start there. The Democrat establishment, aided and abetted by the media establishment, decided that it is now Hillary's turn. At last year's CPAC, many in the media called me mean because I said that, like Mrs. Clinton, I too have traveled hundreds of thousands of miles around the globe, but unlike Mrs. Clinton, I know that flying is an activity, not an accomplishment. Mrs. Clinton, name an accomplishment. During my campaign, I was taken to task by Chris Matthews and others for saying that Hillary Clinton had lied about Benghazi, something everyone now says and knows is true. I was criticized for suggesting that Mrs. Clinton, far from being a trailblazing woman who has risen through her own merit and accomplishment, is in fact someone who has used her husband's name, fame, and charisma to get ahead, who has been willing to say and do anything, sacrifice everything in the power of her ambition. This is the Clinton way. I often joked on the campaign trail that while Hillary Clinton aims for the White House, she is far better suited for the big house. 2,000 of Hillary's released emails were deemed some level of classified. That's 1 out of 14. So here's another way to think about this. Imagine that every other Friday, every single email that you sent that day endangered our national security. I have held the highest clearances available to a civilian. I have worked closely with the CIA, the NSA, and DOD, and I cannot imagine ever sending classified material over a private server. Most of us cannot. Now, we all know why Hillary Clinton did this. She has waited her entire life to be president. Even Saturday Night Live gets the joke. Remember that incredible skit, "Citizens, you will elect me." And by the way, I hope you enjoy the little towel that we left all of you at your table. And just in case no one has told her, no, Mrs. Clinton, you cannot wipe a server with a towel. Despite the misgivings, or at the very least the lack of enthusiasm for rank-and-file voters for Hillary Clinton, she will be the party's standard bearer. The establishment knows that despite that discomfort on the part of their voters, the establishment knows that Hillary will never loosen their grip on power. The Democrat Party establishment is, however, a little bit worried about this lack of enthusiasm, particularly among women. And so now they are reminding people of the historic nature of her candidacy, that she is a woman, after all, and therefore women must vote for her. I've got news for you, Mrs. Clinton. I am a woman, and I am not voting for you. To all the women and girls across this country, regardless of your ideology or your party, let me say this: do not let others define you. Do not let anyone tell you who you have to vote for or what you have to believe. That is not feminism. Feminism does not shut down conversations. It does not threaten women. It is not about ideology. A feminist is a woman who lives the life she chooses and uses all of her God-given gifts. And as a woman and a feminist, let me promise you that I will spend the next 6 months making sure Hillary Clinton is not our next president. Okay, now that we've gotten that fun part out of the way, because it's easy and satisfying to criticize the Democrat Party establishment, it's necessary that we do it, we also tonight need to be honest enough to look ourselves in the mirror. According to all the exit polls in several states now, over half of the Republican electorate feel betrayed by their party. That's a big number. And that's a strong word. The truth is, the Republican establishment thought it also knew just what to do after the 2012 election. First, they decided we needed comprehensive immigration reform. Then, we needed to talk less about the social issues. And there were just too many candidates in the 2012 primaries and too many debates, so let's limit the number of debates. And in fact, let's just condense the whole primary calendar so our presumptive nominee can roll up delegates faster. And let's make sure that the primary voters know who the establishment thinks should be the nominee. Let's have all the pundits and the money make the case right from the start about who we think is next up to bat. Republican voters said, no, we need to secure the border. No, citizenship in this country has to mean something. No, our religious liberty is at stake. No, we don't want who you want. We want to choose for ourselves, and the more choices we have, the better we like it. But now, many pundits, and not a few current and former politicians, are decrying the wisdom of these same voters. They don't like how people are voting right now. But these voters look at the Republican Party and look at what they've produced and think they can do better deciding for themselves. Who can blame them? The border is not secure. 22 veterans commit suicide every single day. Spending increases year after year after year and has for 40 years. Despite promises made every election, Republicans have not stopped the inexorable march of government overreach, overregulation, overtaxation. Entitlements have not been reformed. Government is incompetent and corrupt. And while the establishment now professes its horror over the choice of millions of voters at the ballot box, these same voters are asking, what have you done for me? Now, don't misunderstand me. I am no Donald Trump fan. I did not vote for him in the Virginia primary. But nevertheless, I understand and respect the people who did vote for him. I know many of them. They're not racists or crazies or stupid. While many people call the Donald a fraud, a con man, the truth is, the hard truth is, there are a lot of voters out there who think they have been conned election after election. They know what it is to be promised something and delivered nothing. Tip O'Neill once famously remarked that all politics is local. Actually, I think politics is personal. I think people vote based on their own lives, their own experiences, their own beliefs and hopes and dreams. If we want to defeat Donald Trump, we cannot turn to the establishment once again and ask them to guide the citizenry to the right answer. If we want to defeat Donald Trump, we must defeat him at the ballot box by offering citizens conservative solutions to the problems in their own lives. We must remember who we are. These are pivotal and perilous times in our nation's history. And it is precisely at these kinds of times that we must put our faith in the system that our founders created. Ours was intended to be a citizen government. It is technology, actually, that gives us the tools to truly deliver a citizen government. There are actually no more excuses. We actually can allow citizens to see every regulation before it passes. We actually can gain control over the money government spends by going to zero-based budgeting. We can engage citizens in the process of their government as never before. Individuals can be empowered like never before to push back against the power of the state and the establishment. One of the things you learn when you study history and philosophy is that the fundamentals of human nature never change. People always and for all time yearn for dignity, for purpose in their lives. Power struggles are a part of human existence. And so the Constitution is as vital, as vibrant, as relevant a document today as it was the day it was written. And that is why I am a constitutional conservative. I've traveled and lived and worked all over the world. And I know with absolute certainty that it is only in this country that a young woman can start out as a secretary in the middle of a deep recession, go on one day to become the chief executive of what we turned into the largest technology company in the world, and run for the presidency of the United States. That is only possible in this great nation. And anyone who doubts for a moment the exceptional nature of this nation should travel the world and study its history. I will work hard between now and Election Day to ensure that we have conservative representatives all up and down the ballot. And I will also dedicate my voice, my time, my energy to restoring a citizen government to this great nation. My fellow citizens, my fellow conservatives, it is time. Let us remember who we are. We believe that no one of us is better than any other one of us, that each of us is gifted by God. We believe that everyone can live a life of dignity and purpose and meaning. We know that our principles, our values, our policies work better to lift people up regardless of their circumstance. It is progressives, actually. It is progressives who believe that some are better than others, some are smarter than others, and so some should decide and choose for others. That is not who we are. We are an exceptional nation because we were founded on the bedrock principle that every individual has inalienable rights and that power must never be concentrated but always constrained. Let us not forget these principles in the heat of an election battle. Let us instead rely upon them. Let us stand. Let us stand with the American people. Let us make our case and speak to people's lives and then deliver for them. My fellow citizens, my fellow conservatives, it is time. Let us together take our politics and our government back. Fellow citizens, it is time. It is time we take our country back. Thank you so much, everyone. God bless you.